Welcome to the Knowledge Gumbo podcast, where we mix together timeless wisdom and thought provoking stories based on quotes, sayings, proverbs, and book passages primarily by Black women. I am your host, Alicia Thomas, and fellow knowledge seeker. The roux is ready. Let's get cooking with this week's quote. Courage does not always roar, by Tomi Eriami. Her stories are inspired by her West African heritage. She is an advocate for representation in literature, emphasizing the importance of diverse voices in the publishing industry. That is a powerful, short quote taken from her book. And it is amazing, as I said previously, this quote from the book, Children of Blood and Bone. This is the first book in a trilogy. Blood and Bone is a fantasy novel of action and adventure where you're dropped into a vivid, imaginative world. It is about a group of teens on a quest to resurrect magic within the kingdom of Oshira. They must travel through worlds, collect artifacts, all while fending off royal guards. It's filled with unique locales, colorful characters, loyal allies, and bitter foes. In a way, it reminds me when I was a kid, I liked to watch and participate, even play the video game of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, but this is way more involved and more detailed, and she creates a colorful, powerful world that sucks the reader in. When we look at this quote, we have to admit, at least to myself, courage is multifaceted. And when you look at the actual word, it derives from the Latin word cor, which means heart. So courage comes from the heart. And so courage doesn't necessarily, as it states, has to roar. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be in your face. Because a lot of times when things are loud and boisterous for anything other than joy among family and friends, it's trying to cover up for something that person feels it's lacking, or something they want to hide, so that you look over here at the loudness, but you don't look over here at what could be a problem or an issue or something they just don't want you to see. It's kind of like loud courage is a lot of times it's kind of like a sleight of hand. I want you to concentrate on this and not concentrate on what's going on underneath it. Quiet courage is a simple action, and it is the opposite of procrastination, because a lot of times that boisterousness is putting off things. But if you have quiet courage, if you're systematically going through things, even if you're not 100% comfortable, like in the quote by Misty Copeland, you can be uncertain and still use that quiet courage to take the steps you need to take, knowing that to get from A to B, you got to take that first step. Like when they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You can't get from point A to point B if you don't take that first step. You know, loud courage is sometimes also other ways of being negative, in the sense that it can be negative from the standpoint of being at the center in the room against something, leading troops in. Loud courage can come off positive, like being a dissenter in the room, when something needs to be said and everyone needs to hear it. Positive loud courage is like leading troops into a battle against what seems like impossible odds. Positive loud courage could be like those of first responders, where they go in when other people are running out in the opposite direction. To be more real about the example, it's like Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on the bus. That was a quiet stint of courage that erupted into loud courage of the community of Montgomery standing up against segregation. Quiet courage that ends up being loud is like Ida B. Wells, whose whole publishing career began when a friend of hers was lynched. And instead of just yelling into the darkness, she created a publishing career where she fought against lynching and tried to get lynching legislation passed to save the lives of other people in the South who were being attacked. Quiet courage is like Charlotte Ray. She's the first African American woman to graduate from a law school. She was not fully allowed to practice her entire life due to both racism and sexism, having a hard time finding a job, and even Black people not giving her a chance as a woman to defend them. But before she had to hang up her shingle for good, she did manage to win a divorce case, even though that was not her area of expertise. She won a divorce case for a woman who was dealing with a violent husband. And at this time in the world, women didn't really divorce husbands for domestic violence. A critical part of the law at that potential time, whether the woman was Black or white. The law didn't particularly care or protect these women. And these women stayed and they didn't divorce. But she managed to provide a satisfactory victory for her client, which I think is totally, totally amazing. It's just quiet courage is just the ability to feel the fear sometimes and do it anyway. Sometimes quiet courage comes in, I'm going to do it, but I don't want the recognition for it. I just want to give. I just want to add value. It manifests itself in everyday actions, more so than the big, major, grand gestures that people like to say that courage is really about. Most times, the best way, as they say, to hear God's voice is to be still. And the best way sometimes to know what's in your heart and what brings out the courage in you is to be still as well. I saw recently, I don't know how true these stories are, but there's this YouTube channel that talks about celebrities and celebrity athletes, and it tells little stories. And I don't know how true it is, but this story really impacted me. It tells the story where Steph Curry, basketball player, Golden State Warriors, goes into a coffee shop. And in this coffee shop, one of the regulars gets on him talking about the athletes come in and think they own everything and can do anything. Now, Steph hasn't said anything to this man, isn't saying anything to this man. But this waitress, Amara, quietly defends him and says he does a lot of good in the community and he gives back. And the same customer goes, yeah, they just do that to try to make themselves look good. There's no really heart or anything behind it. And this waitress quietly defends him and says, no, he does a lot of good in Oakland and in other areas of San Francisco that helps a lot of people. And as she's defending him, again, Steph quietly thanks her for what she did. And as he leaves, the waitress goes back and the owner of the coffee shop tells her, "You can't do that to my regular customers. They're how I make my money, not this once in a while drop in by, athletes and things of that nature." And the waitress is fired. She is fired for just quietly defending the generosity of Steph Curry. Well, when she returns the next day to pick up her final check, Steph Curry is in the coffee shop waiting for her. He calls her over, thanks her for what she tried to do and what she said, and then he offers her a job at his foundation, Eat, Learn, and Play. You should definitely check it out. And because of her willingness to step out and defend him and to speak positively, he offers her an opportunity to work for the foundation. And she is blessed based on her ability to quietly defend someone who, if you really want to think about it, didn't need to be defended. But it was an amazing, amazing act of courage, but on a smaller scale. And one of the things that really pops up in my head when I think about stories of quiet courage, I heard this story in a sermon, and I don't remember exactly all of it, but the essence is this. There was a young boy, small in stature, who would get on the school bus every day and was picked on by bullies. And he tried to stay out of their way, but they always managed to find him and give him grief. One day he decided, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm gonna not physically fight back, but I'm gonna stand up for myself. So he's surrounded by these boys, and so he goes to stand up from his seat and they push him back down. He stands up again. They push him back down. But he knows he can't really do what he wants to do if he's not on his feet. So he goes one more time to stand up, and they push him back down and tell him to stay down. And he said, "Physically, you may hold me down, but I'm standing up inside myself." And I'm like, that really hit me that, yeah, surroundings may not look what it's like, but that doesn't mean inside ourselves that we cannot stand up, be heard, be counted. And it doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be violent. When we know who we are and when we're willing to share the things that we have inside of us with other people, that's all the courage we need. It is an amazing thing to just stand up and say, this is who I am and this is what I have to give and contribute. Or in the case of Amara, you can't just pick on someone because you don't agree with them or you have had a bad experience, say, per se, with a celebrity, and now you're going to take it out on all celebrities. Or if this particular person did it just to get the shine, that doesn't mean everyone is doing it to get the shine. And we have to have the courage to defend people, whether there's someone as big as Steph Curry or whether there's someone who's being picked on by a Karen or a Susan in a store. It is up to us to be defenders of justice against injustice wherever we find it. Let me back a little bit. Let's look at the short quote one more time. Courage does not always have to roar. So when we look at the challenge for this week, if courage were a sound, what would it be? Please comment below Describe it in 3 words or less. If courage were a sound, what would it be? And I want to appeal to you as well to don't forget to pick up a copy of Children of Blood and Bone. The link will be in the description. I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. And remember, courage does not have to roar. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be boastful. There's an underlying strength that can be silent, quiet, but effective. If this is your first time listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, it may be strange, but I'm going to ask you not to subscribe or follow right away unless this really hits you where you live. Take the time. Listen to a few more episodes before you commit. Because as the joke goes, we want active family members, not hostages, in our gumbo kitchen. Thank you for engaging in this episode of Knowledge Gumbo. Share it with 2 friends. Please leave a positive review on your podcast platforms that you use. Know that you are always welcome to pull up a chair because there's always room at the table. The gumbo is hot and made with love. See you next week.
Gather round, y'all. It's time to groove.